Yeah.
So you couldn't always just take off when you wanted to. And, I remember the time we were in Ireland, and you were trying to go back over to England from there, and it took a long time before the wind
Well,
was
guess what?
favorable.
Annie Penfield Sear and I had taken the car over on the ferry, and we were going to spend one night in England waiting for you all to come on the boat. And what, I forgot, oh, the weather was so bad that you couldn't come for days. So you all were stuck, so to speak, in Ireland, and Annie and I were stuck in England, and we hadn't prepared for more than overnight.
We had cell phones, and we thought, no problem, we're going to be in touch with each other. But there were the phone company, I forgot the name of it, the principal European cell phone company had the company in Ireland and the company in England had the same names, but different ownerships, and were operating under different rules. And they were having a fight.
And they were fighting.
They got into a fight and they just shut off our service. So Abby was up near London with friends of ours, with
No.
yeah,
Well, I spent one night with Sylvie.
with Sylvie, but then you had, was it Annie with you?
Yeah. Annie was to meet her family and fly home. And she had to just fly home from England. And I guess they were on the same plane. So they met at the airport. But this was days later. Annie and I did everything we could think of in this little country town of, can't remember the name.
Well, the harbor master finally arranged for us through the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard, the Irish Coast Guard, called the British Coast Guard, and let me pass us through between their networks. And I was finally able to call Abby because they realized that we were in a ridiculous situation.
You'd be stuck there forever.
Well, we couldn't contact each other.
So we didn't know where to meet.
Well, also Wilder and I were with you, but eventually you said, look, this is crazy. We're going to be here for a long time, and you bought us a bus ticket, and we took off for another spot in Ireland.
On the West Coast. The original airport, where the first transatlantic flights after World War II all landed at Shannon. And then they went on to London or other places in Europe. So we got you to Shannon. We were able to get you on a plane home. Well, you and I alone finally were able to cross from the southeast coast, the corner of Ireland. Table Moori?
Yeah.
A lovely little town. And we sailed across to Falmouth, England.
Just the two of you?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was really nervous because the weather was still bad, but it had gotten enough better that Don said we better go. We got to get over there. We were meeting other friends in England. And so the two of us went, but the weather was okay. But I was worried because it was quite a long.
Well, they call it Land's End, that southwest corner of England. And we were finally able to get out around it and sailed into Plymouth, I think. No, Falmouth, England.
And then we went to Dartmouth.
Yeah, we went to Dartmouth, England on the way back to London. it was a fabulous adventure. Let's face it. I think back in those years, we did so many things that that boat never should have done. But
Yep.
it did it, and it was fine, and people couldn't believe it.
Well, we ran into the man that had sold it to us, who had become a friend, and we ran into him later.
He was a broker, he didn't own it.
And he said to us, he said, if I had had any idea what you were going to do with that boat, I never would have sold it to you. So I'm glad he didn't know.
But we seldom do we get into places that were really trouble. And seldom at sea. We got into some poundy situation, but there were very few. Seemed that every time we almost got in trouble in really violent situations, it was always Sarah and Steve Spencer with us. They managed to hit all of them. But at no time was I afraid for our life. I was afraid for the boat and hoped it would all hold together, which it did. Zapard was a wonderful, wonderful boat.
Wait, what about the famous journey across the Mediterranean Sea? It sounded like some people were afraid for their lives on that voyage.
Yes. Yes, they were.
But that was the beginning. That was the first crossing. And we were crossing from Dina on the coast of Spain to Ibiza, part of the Balearic Islands, Majorca and Menorca. And that, I had food poisoning. And I was sicker than a dog. And was it Tracy and Laurie?
No, it was
Laurie was on it.
Laurie was there.
Laurie and Gay and Kent.
Laurie, Gay, and Kent.
And then my sister Sarah and her two children, but not Zab. And you and I.
And we went out of the harbor, and the seas built up, and it was a hell of a storm. And we were pounding our way. And I finally felt well enough, after all night of this, to stumble up there and realize if we had stuck with it another hour, we probably would have made it to Ibiza. But I was in no shape to make that decision. We turned around and went back to the coast of Spain. And
to Dina.
Dina. And hung out there for a week till the thing blew itself out. That was, and I think that was the first time that we really were in a pretty violent situation.
And we had the first engine on the boat, which was 42 horsepower.
40 hours roughly. And
it needed much more.
Which is not a lot of horsepower for 40
tons.
No. But and the second engine was 120 horsepower. That worked out well. But
and even that was strained a few times, trying to get out of places where the wind was against us. It was really tough.
And sometimes in rivers, with a little engine, the current was coming down, and I'd put the boat right on the shore virtually and try to get in minimal current, and we just, inch at a time, make it up to a few places.
But there was that one time when you were going down the Rhone? Rhine, when, again, no one else was on the water at all because there was these huge floods. And you made record time going.
That.
Because you were the only people crazy enough to go.
Well,
go
we
in the
weren't
water.
supposed to. They had put a ban on people traveling down the river, but we were under international colors, and
The Rhine,
we just
the
went.
Rhine River and the Danube are both international waterways, and they're on totally different rules. And so they couldn't stop us. They wanted to, but they closed the river to all the commercial traffic. But in reality, that was, once we learned how to deal with it, as long as we were going faster than the water, we had good steerage way. We learned how to steer and get into a back eddy if we wanted to stop somewhere. And we learned those things, and then it wasn't bad.
Wasn't that just the two of you doing that?
Yeah, some of it. Well,
Some of it was, but mostly we had
mostly had guests
guests
aboard.
or somebody with us.
But one of the last ones was with Adam Cruzy, Carolyn's son and his now wife on their honeymoon trip, which we gave them as their wedding present. And we came down from Nancy to Koblenz into the Rhine and to Cologne. And we were flying along at 17, 18 knots, which is just incredible. And we couldn't tie up along the river. All the docks were underwater. And some of them were on pontoons, but they were reversed. The water was so high. Instead of going up the way you do down here, up, you could get on if you could get on and you'd walk down, but we couldn't tie up to them. So we always had to go to a place where we could turn out of the current. And we learned to be pretty adept at that. But we did learn how to deal with Descartes, and amazing, and she performed magnificently. And so did this one. Because quite often it was Abby steering, and I was navigating, making sure that, because a lot of bends and things in the rivers, and a lot of stuff floating.
Yeah, it was, you couldn't blink for a minute because there was so much stuff in the water. But it was kind of exciting.
It was very exciting. But the boat performed and the crew performed.
So what was your favorite river? Do you have a favorite river?
Well, parts of the Rhine were pretty spectacular, the upper Rhine. And the Elbe, no, the Elbe was not a favorite river.
No, a lot of the Elbe was
The river
kind of
from
dull.
Nancy to Koblenz was the Meuse? No. Oh boy. From Nancy, we went from Paris to Nancy, and then down that river to Koblenz, where it hooked into the Rhine. And that was a beautiful, beautiful river.
And the Seine was kind of nice.
What?
The Seine
Oh,
River.
the Seine had some lovely parts, but the Seine was easy. That was just a meandering, slow-moving river.
I remember traveling through Paris, though, and having to go through 100 different locks to...
Oh, to get there.
Well, in Paris,
Oh,
we traveled through, or around, we circumvented the
yeah,
city.
but there weren't 100. There were only about 10 or 15.
Okay, perhaps I exaggerated by 10.
But that was exciting to be able to circumnavigate Paris by boat, including in tunnels.
And we found a tie-up place right practically under the Eiffel Tower.
We spent a lot of time there.
They finally caught up with us and told us it wasn't a place for...
Right, you tied up right behind a big cruise ship.
Yeah.
That was a nice spot.
Yeah.
And nobody really noticed us.
We stayed there for a long time, many different parts of our trips. Finally, the harbor authority every day had a little adventure to it, but really Zaphod performed magnificently for us. But it was a lot, taking care of her, and making sure she stayed that way was a lot of work. I figure we spent at least a month a year doing nothing but maintenance.
Because you pretty much, you painted it every year, didn't you?
You know, the hull and bottom we did every 2 years.
And that's when you had to go find a place to
Haul it out of the
haul
water.
it out of the water.
But we had family and friends from the States who flew over in exchange for coming on trips with us. They helped us work. First met Joe Fisher.
I do. What am I supposed to say?
Do we want to tell the truth?
Okay, let's hear
I
it.
can't remember the truth.
Do you remember where we met him the first time?
Well, I thought it was at our house.
No. I think the first time we met him, Lori was teaching it the first year at Putney.
Second year.
Second year at Putney. And she was living in a dorm.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to remember where you were living.
Well, I had a house in Westminster, but I also was taking advantage of the fact that her apartment was very close to the art building.
Yeah. Well, that's where I remember meeting you, at her apartment
Oh, okay.
in Putney.
Well,
And we began to get a hint that there was, maybe some shenanigans going on. But
yeah, I remember going cross-country skiing with you, Joe.
Oh, Lord, that was quite the experience. I remember so much snow packing up on the bottom of those skis.
yeah,
I had a hard time being jolly and sporting, with since
You
I couldn't
weren't.
move at all.
you weren't challenged, but
What were they,
I had
your
these
skis or our
old
skis?
wooden skis. No,
Well-
I brought my own, I think.
yeah, you did.
Oh,
And I can really remember the first time we met Julia. You brought her, I think we met her the first time when you brought her up to our house. I don't remember the occasion.
and she was 4.
Yeah. And she had a little bit of the Dickens in her. Not a lot, but we never, for a while before we realized how she appeared and where she appeared from. And then she grew on us, and of course, Julia, in the early mornings, the kids would come up on Sundays or Saturdays and get in bed with us, and Abby would read to them, and I'd be trying to sleep on the other side. When Julia was added to the collection, she knew that I was ticklish in the bottom of my feet. And to make room in the bed, she'd go under the covers and start tickling my feet. And I was going to kill her. But I didn't. And she really obviously grew on us.